Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Fig and Farm at Home. I am your host, Danny Watson, and today I am joined by a new friend, an organizing specialist, and actually a Jill of many trades. Have you heard that phrase, a jack of many trades? My mom used to say that she was the jack of many trades, and she really was. Cake decorating, sewing, cooking, car mechanic, hunter, all the things. But Nicole is a Jill of many trades. You will hear her talk a little bit about her story. She is trilingual, super impressive, an actress, a model, an organizing expert, an author, and an artist, so much more. Today, we are focusing our conversation on organizing. And if you've been hanging around with me for a while, you know that the decorating piece happens at the end. Before we can decorate, before we can make things pretty, we've got to get our stuff in order. We have to really think about the functionality of our space. We have to think about how we want our room to be used, the purpose of it, and then build out from there. And sometimes, quite frankly, there are things that stand in the way. And some of those things are the things that plague us the most. It is the stuff, and I don't want any of you to be stuff managers. And neither does Nicole. So today we are talking about her system for organizing. And I want to give you a sneak peek because she gives some really great nuggets of wisdom. But a couple of the things that she mentioned really stood out to me. One of the things that she mentioned was that when you organize, you want to organize for retrieval, for the ease of retrieval. And she has a phrase for that. But that really stood out to me. And it really justifies, Mr. Fig and Farm, if you're listening, it really justifies my reasoning for when I am organizing our spice shelf. I have a savory spice for cooking, and I have a baking spice shelf for baking, more of the sweetie spices. So, Mr. Fig and Farm, that justifies my reasoning for organizing our spices in the way that we do. Not alphabetically, but in terms of ease of retrieval. If I'm going to be baking cookies or if I'm going to be making pasta, I want to go to that specific shelf in order to grab it easily. And the other thing that Nicole mentioned that I think is really, really fantastic, and she had a visual for it because, of course, we talk over Zoom, but she had a visual for it that I explained a little bit in the podcast, and that was her halfway book. And this was such a neat idea for collecting and organizing all of those teeny tiny little papers that kind of float throughout your house that you are ideas that you want to come back to later, but you look at the paper and you're thinking, I don't even know what this was for, and you throw it away, and you have to find it, but you don't know which stack of papers it is in, and it's usually on your kitchen counter, or you get the idea. She has a system for that, and it's pretty brilliant. All right, friends, enough of me chitty-chatting. I want you to really sit back, take a listen, and enjoy today's show. We grew up with the phrase, home is where the heart is, but our culture has shifted, and now the message is, home should be Pinterest perfect. I'm calling BS on that message. Home, it's not about the stuff, it's about the story. And whether you know it or not, your home is a reflection of you and is already saying something. So what is it that you want it to say? Hey, I'm Danny, a former first grade teacher turned home decorator. Going from a dual income to a single income so I could stay home with my babies meant budget, like ramen eating, Goodwill shopping budget. And I learned a few things along the way, like how to bring big style to your home without breaking the bank. And I'm sharing it all with you. Tips, tricks, decor, and design advice so you can learn to tell your story with your style, where you can start living free from the Pinterest perfect trap and start living a life of intention. Welcome to Fig and Farm at Home, where we design happy living and where it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Hi, Nicole. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Danny.
I've introduced you already and told them a little bit about who you are and what you do, but can you say it in your own words? Who are you? What do you do? And who do you serve?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So who am I? Wow. I feel like I'm a mosaic of so many things. I have a business professionally organizing people's homes and offices. I'm also an author and a writer. I'm an artist. Right now I'm doing mixed media. I'm also a sister. I am an aunt. My background is I was born in Lima, Peru, and I have family in Lima and in France. My dad was French Peruvian, so we lived in Paris for a year. So I speak three languages, and I go back to Lima a lot. I have a lot of family there. And yeah, so these days I'm really trying to help people get organized and learn about systems and how they work.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So I serve a group of moms who really want to learn how to decorate their homes. And part of that I teach them is that it doesn't just start with the beautiful things. It
Right.
starts with getting your life in order. And sometimes we start with the decluttering and then the organizing after that, and then the beautiful things. So can you talk a little bit about why organizing, first of all, is so important?
Absolutely. Well, we know it's important for our mental health, for our well-being, and it's part of self-care. I know how others feel because they tell me, and I've gone through it a couple of times too. When things are not in order, I am tired and sluggish, and I cannot move forward because I don't even know what's sitting in front of me or around me. And I think I 100% agree that first we have to do the decluttering. Like that's kind of just the start. And I always tell people start small. But yes, the pretty, doing what I call the containerization, all the decor, that really is the last thing we want to do because you want to be able to see what you have after you decluttered. And then there is a crucial step in between, which I talk about in my book, which is how to organize what's left. I think we've had a great groundbreaking experience in the past 10 years or so with decluttering. And now I like to provide information about what's next. How do we now organize our stuff and then decide how do we make it pretty?
Right, exactly. And you used a word that I've not heard before, but I love it. Maybe you've coined this, Nicole, but you said containerization. And
Oh, yeah.
I I know what I suggest when I'm talking to my mamas. I want to hear from you. So if a mom comes to you and she says, "Hey, I've just decluttered. I'm ready to get my life in order. I'm ready to organize.
Yeah.
Where do I start?" What would you
Yes.
recommend to that mom?
So my first step, I have a 6-step process, and I basically have used that process over and over. I use it in my own life. I feel like there is just no other way. You have to go through this process. The 6 steps that I use, I have likened or compare, related to the color wheel since I'm an artist, and my book is fully illustrated. I did all the illustrations. So in my color wheel, in any color wheel, the first three colors, the primary colors, are in parallel with the first 3 steps. So the first principle, I call it sectional organizing. So once you know what you're keeping, you want to divide that room up in 2 sections. And that decision is made by what are you doing in each of the sections? So, if it's your bedroom and you might have a reading area, you might have an area where you keep your meditation items, you might have a little bookcase somewhere, you might have your linens somewhere. So you decide what sections are going to be in that room and what are you doing in each section. So if you have your reading area, well, you probably want a nice comfy chair, then you want a little table or some kind of little stand for your favorite books or magazines. And so you divide those things up now that you know what you're keeping into sections. And if those sections that you've decided for that room, if everything doesn't fit in those sections, then you think about what's left. Okay, maybe I do that activity in a different room. So you kind of narrow it down for each room. And then I call it zones. So the zones principle, and I use it a different way than most people seem to use it. And that is you want to have the things you use the most in that particular section in your zone one. So, for example, you might have a little reading area for your kids, and it could be in your bedroom. But now, as they got older, those other books they don't use anymore. So you want to put those in a different zone. So, zone one are the things you use all the time, and that you want the nearest to you at your fingertips. And then you go back from there. So, zone two, you don't use it as often, but you want to have it near. Zone three might be in a closet. And then you have that's it. Zone four is your limit, and that might be basement, attic, or high up in a closet. So that's how I start to divide up what I have, and now decided the priority of the items where that fits, and then I'm ready to start buying beautiful things.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So you mentioned the 6-step process. With
Yes.
that, and the sections and the zones, are
Yes.
those two parts of your 6-step process?
Yes. And the third one being the containers, what
Okay.
you're going to store in. So it's storage, it's whatever stuff you're going to keep in that space. You want to figure out, how do I want to use this? Like, do I want a little bookcase or do I want a cabinet with doors? I don't want to see that stuff. Or do I need a drawer to pull out? Do I need it portable? Should it be in a box with a handle? Think about really what you're wanting to store and how you do that activity.
Yeah, exactly. And the purpose of, like you were just mentioning, do you need a cupboard? Do you need something with doors? Do you need
Yes.
something with a rolly? I love
Yep.
that you're really thinking about the intention behind the room, and it all starts with that intentionality. What are you using this room for? What are you doing in that room? I love that.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. You have to think it through because you don't want to make mistakes, waste money, buy this cabinet. Oh, it doesn't even work. Or
Yeah,
I have way less things than this big cabinet I bought. Or I have so much more that needs to go there and this little bookcase isn't going to work. So
right.
you really want to evaluate what you're putting in your zone one that you want in your space.
Right, right. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about are the zones, when you're saying zone one, zone two, zone three, I
Yeah.
understand the prioritization of that. Is that within the section? So if
Yes.
I'm in my, okay, so if I'm in my reading corner, let's go there. If I'm
Yes.
in my
Yep.
reading corner in my room, that is my section. And
Yes.
then I'm going to have a zone one within that section. I'm going to have the
Exactly.
seating area and the little cabinet next to it.
Exactly. And you kind of need to do that. Once you start dividing up sections, you realize that because each section is really an activity.
Yeah,
So, what are you doing in that activity? You start to see that all the related items are not all equally important.
right,
So,
right,
if you want to, maybe you're drawing in your journal and you're using these favorite pencils, that's great. You want that in your zone one. But what if you have acrylic paints, then you have oil paints, and then you have other supplies and you have stencils? So those might be things that you use sometimes, but you don't need all of it right in front of you.
right. And I imagine that helps with the decluttering process as well. Once you understand your section and your zones within the section, you might
Precise.
realize I actually don't do this ever. I can get rid of it,
Exactly.
or I
And
don't have
that's,
space for it. I can get rid of
yes. Exactly. And that's the part about, I know that decluttering comes first. And do you love it? Does it serve you? Yes. But that's sort of a broad brushstroke, I think, because once you get a little deeper into it, when it's in its own section, you will further declutter. You will further, like you said, realize, gosh, I haven't used those paints. And in fact, they're kind of dried out. And these
Yeah,
brushes are really not so fresh anymore. So that process does continue to evolve as you're doing your sections and zones.
right.
Definitely.
What
Yeah.
what happens when you realize you're in this section,
Yeah.
and you have more things that will fit there?
Yeah. I
What
really
would
think
you suggest for organizing that?
I suggest continue to brush stroke that, continue to finesse it. Get really serious with yourself because this is your self-care. The goal is to bring you more peace, more of a haven in your home so you can feel relaxed in your space. So you have to be honest with yourself. How much do you really use that particular journal? Maybe it's full. Maybe you don't like the paper anymore. So you have to keep asking yourself, how much do I really use this? And if I don't, where does it fit in a different zone?
Right.
Because you can only store as much space as you have for things that need a space to store. And
Exactly.
right, and you can't just be buying all these giant cabinets for your room. You'll have nowhere to sleep and nowhere to walk.
Right. And then it all goes back to that mental health and that self-care. And
Totally.
I know for me, there's a very visceral reaction I get when I see crud everywhere, when I see things overflowing that didn't find its way into that organized space.
Yeah.
And that can, at times in my earlier adulthood, that felt a little like I couldn't explain why I was getting so, and I'm just going to use the word uptight about the stuff that was out.
Yeah.
And it really came down to it doesn't feel good. It makes
Yeah.
me feel cluttered. It makes me feel disorganized. It makes me feel like I don't have my life together.
Right.
And
100%. And I think what happens with people, at least my clients kind of say to me, I hear it a lot, is I should know how to do this, or I know what I need to do. I don't know where to start.
yeah,
But I don't know that that's entirely true because my feeling is I worked in corporate America for 10 years and the corporate world is made up of systems. It's just how they function. And unless I had that experience to see deep inside how they function, and also how to store for retrieval. That's the other key. It wasn't like take all the papers and shove them in a drawer. Well, no, I worked in production. You had to be able to, on a moment's notice, like, tell me who was the cameraman on 3 commercials ago that we did in January. Well, I'd have to have a really good way to retrieve information.
Right.
So that's, that being the key, I feel like organizing is a skill and people need to learn it, and if you're not exposed to systems in any way, I know a lot of entrepreneurs maybe haven't worked in a corporate environment and they get overwhelmed. Well, it's because if you don't have that knowledge of systems and how things work and prioritize and storing for retrieval, it's very hard to start from nothing to create a system. So I think really, yeah, anyone can learn it, but you need to start somewhere. And, there's a lot of books out there, and I put my book out to make it a little more fun, a little more attainable, because it is illustrated, but yet it gives you a really good description of systems.
And I like the way that you put that, storing for retrieval. I immediately think of one of my friends who has Tetrised
Oh,
the
yeah.
storage closet and for his child.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of stuff. He's got,
Mhm.
excuse me, he's got really great things in order for the kiddo to play, but
Yes.
it is not a system for retrieval.
Yeah.
He loses the things that he wants to play with. Um, does he have the Play-Doh? He doesn't know because it's so buried deep in that Tetris
Right.
of that closet.
Right.
And on the outset, when I open it up, it looks organized, and I am air quoting organized, but it really is not, because there's not a system in place to retrieve it.
That's such a good point. People, when they invite me over to their homes or whatever, don't look at my kitchen. It's not organized. I wouldn't know that necessarily. I mean, if it's obvious, yes, it's obvious. But like you said, I could open the pantry and well, be like, wow, this looks super orderly. But if the salt they use every day is in behind the paper towels, then we know something isn't flowing here. It's not functioning how it should.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And you have to have that intentionality so that you can understand the purpose, the functionality, and then you build the
exactly.
system around it. Okay, so
Yes.
you walked us through, if I'm counting right, 3 steps of your 6-step process. So sectional,
Yep.
zones, and
Yep.
containerization. What happens next?
What happens next? So the next steps are a little more in depth, I would say, because now we start to look at information management. And with information management, that starts to dig a little deeper into, I mean, I feel like time, the way you function in time and space, helps you with information management. So how do we take everything we have in our maybe home management section, or maybe we have a home office, all the materials that are accumulated for that, how do we take the information with us? So first you have to know what you have, like we said, and you have to store it for retrieval. So it's all about that. I get very in depth in that subject in my book, and it has lots of layers to it. But once you see the concept, it's like, okay, we have all this information. How do we access it? And then how do we make it portable? So that's the next section, or the next step. My principles are 6 principles. The next step of the 6-step process is portability. So once we look at the information you have, how you want to use it, whether it's putting information in a calendar that the whole family can use. How do you, again, make systems so that everyone can follow? That's the information management. And then next is the portability. So I have different parts of portability that I talk about in the book. One of my most important, and I have an example, is I call this the halfway book. And I'll tell you why. Because in our lives, I think we can maybe all relate to this. We gather papers, we gather little notes, a business card, right? Somebody tells you something at lunch and you write it down and go, oh, I need to buy that book. Or, oh yeah, I want to look into that trip to Barbados. But you're not getting all into it right then and there.
Right.
And you write it on a piece of paper. So what ends up happening is, inevitably, we have little papers all around our desk or in our purse or our pockets.
Yes.
And yeah, right. And I call it little paper syndrome because we all have it,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
right? And
You call it the halfway book?
this one is that because this is a system of retrieval by categories.
Yeah.
So my categories are spelled out thoughtfully before I start my book, and I put them all in, label makers so
Yeah.
that they're all really clear. And I put my information in here that I will call halfway between a random note that I never use again, or it becomes something, but it had to start somewhere.
Right.
So before it becomes a file or a notebook or digitized in many ways, but we still always have some paper. We
Right.
just do. We
Right.
do. So I use this kind of like a journal, but not really. So all those little papers that we talked about that you might have jotted down something, then I come in and put it in my book. The reason I love this because people will say, "Oh, well, I have a spiral notebook. It's okay." And I say, "Wow, the difference is in a spiral notebook because yes, it's spiral bound, but it can be in any format. It can even be digital. When you're looking through a spiral notebook or a legal pad, and you say, "Oh, I know I wrote her phone number down. It's in red, but it's on the top right-hand side of that page. Hold on, let me flip through my
Yeah.
58 pages till I find it."
Right.
But if you seek that information categorically, you have a much better chance of finding it really quick.
Right. Let me just interrupt for a second for those who are listening to this and not watching the video. What
Yeah.
Nicole is holding up is a spiral bound book with categories, tabs on the side. Tell us the labels on your tabs. What are your categories?
So that's a great question because that's part of when I work with people one-on-one, that is part of what I help them figure out because that
Okay.
can be a little tricky
Yeah.
and it changes.
And your
Um,
categories will likely be different than mine. It's probably based on priority,
exactly.
I'm assuming, and
Exactly.
your life. Okay.
Different things happening in your life, things like that. The other key thing is I date them.
Okay.
So this is my older book that I almost retired it, but I
Okay.
wanted to show you what a filled up book looks like because
Fantastic.
my new book is pretty blank right now.
Yeah.
So this one, sometimes they last me 6 or 8 months, and then I'll put the beginning date, the end date, and I hang on to these for several years.
Okay.
So, and I have many times gone back to a book and be like, okay, I know I talked to somebody about a great mover and it was last summer. So then I'll pull out that book.
Yeah. And there you found it.
So, yeah. And
Fantastic.
maybe
So,
at the time I never used it, but yeah.
yeah. So if I were to say, hey, Nicole, can you help me come up with categories for mine? What are some of the questions you might ask me in order to determine what categories I need?
Yes. So first I would look at the little papers you have and the notes you keep, right? Because it's really about what information comes at you on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And then we would go through what your life is comprised of these days, today. What's your business? Maybe something about your podcast, maybe new clients, maybe medical, maybe each of your children's names, maybe you have a pet, and then some section for fun things. You might see a flyer or you might jot down a note. Oh, I want to look into that play. It's in, my nearest town or whatever. So I do make room for fun. That's pretty much the main category. If you ask me what mine were, I mean, I'm involved in different things. So my company is Be Organized. So I have a couple, and actually the beauty of this book, it's divided into 12 sections. But if
Okay.
you have a bigger category, you assign two of the sections for it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have Be Organized a couple of times. I have my acting and modeling when I get agent calls. I'm involved with a YMCA project. So YMCA is on here. Medical, because I'm always getting notes on that. My little fur baby. One is PR and publicity because I'm, working on publicizing my book. And the name of the distributor company because they call me or they'll email me notes. I have a section called fun. So ideas for fun. I have one called house because all kinds of stuff comes up when you have a house.
Right.
It's like you need a plumber. Well, maybe you got some ideas, but you just didn't know who to call yet. Keep it in my book, until I'm ready. And then the last one I have is financials. So these were all the things that were very high priority in my life last year because this is my last year's book.
Yeah.
So I will rethink it this time. Many of these sections will be the same.
Right.
But I might say, oh, okay, well, I want to do travel because now I'm looking into that. So you think through that way.
Wonderful. I love that. And the minute you said, I would look at your papers, the papers that are floating around, I immediately pictured my counter in my kitchen, right?
Yeah.
That landing
Mhm.
spot that gets all of the like, oh, that permission slip I need to sign or I need to remember, or
Yes.
oh, that thing, that whatever
Yep.
that thing is, there are multiple.
Yeah.
That could be a really nice holding spot until it has a permanent place, whether it's a Google file or something else, or the trash can. I imagine some of those,
Yeah.
you're done with it and it can be put away.
100%. You got it. That's exactly the purpose. So it's different than a to-do list because I feel
Yeah.
like a to-do list is much more one and done. Like
Yep.
it's your list. Once it's done, you don't need that information anymore because whatever the to-do was, it will have generated either a file, new information, a phone call, emails or whatever.
Right.
But yes, this book is meant to be, like you said, a holding section.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's portable. So I
It-
don't take it with me to dinner because it's a
yeah.
little too but I come home later and put the notes in.
Right, right. But
Yeah.
you may have referenced it before dinner in your fun section. Where am I going? That
Yeah.
restaurant, I heard
Exactly.
Sue's mention. I'm gonna go and find it because I know I put it in my fun section.
Yes.
Oh, I
That-
love that. Okay,
yeah.
so portability
Mhm.
was number 5 in your 6-step process.
Yes.
Okay, what is
And the
number?
last one is called Back to One.
Okay,
And I'll explain that. If I just said that, does
I,
that,
I would have no idea what
no
that.
idea? Okay, good. So when I worked in TV production for many years, and when we were shooting, I worked on several kids shows, live action, commercials, whatever. And in order for that set to be ready for filming, many people weighed in on that. So you had lighting people, you had the set designers, you had the director, the producer. Everyone had a say in how this is going to look before we start shooting. Perfect. So you have your set all ready to go and you bring in your actors and you start rolling, roll tape. And for some reason, the director says, cut, because whatever, who knows what happened? Maybe a sound issue, maybe they didn't like the way this scene worked. Maybe it needed to be a different way, whichever. So, but in that moment when they were shooting, the actors were there, they were moving stuff around, they sat on this sofa, then they moved to this kitchen and they grabbed the glass, and everything gets moved around. So when he calls cut, everyone pauses, they do whatever fixing they had to do, and then he'll say, okay, everybody, back to one. So everything has to be put back into that baseline place
Yes.
that everyone had agreed on.
Okay.
So that's back to one in our homes and in our offices is get your home or your space, whatever it is, to a place that you call your baseline.
Yeah.
Like when it's pretty, this is how it looks,
Lovely.
and then you live your life and you
Yep.
do and play and you have whatever, kids, the dog, you have all kinds of things. But either every night or once a week on the weekend, couple of hours, you want to get back to one.
Yeah, I love that concept. So when I teach about cleaning your home,
Yeah.
I talk about company ready, and my company ready is my back to
Back
one.
to one,
Yeah,
100%.
I love it.
Yeah,
My
I love
baseline, ground
that.
zero, whatever
Yeah.
word you want, but I love that back to one.
Yeah. Because I
Fantastic.
feel like we have to do that in our offices, even though we're not having company in the office, but
Yeah.
you can't let it get too far away from you.
Yeah. And I imagine as you run your own business and I run my own, my Friday back to one is making sure my inbox is at zero. I have my things set for next week. I know exactly what I'm doing on Monday because it changes daily. Sounds like for you
Right.
too, it just changes. So
Always. So, yep.
yeah, and if you don't have that, it can be that grasping of what do I do and who do I see and
Oh,
where's my book and
it gets chaotic unless you have your back to one and you start fresh again.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Fantastic. Tell me a little bit about, I know when I'm decorating with clients, there's a perception that I have to live right down the street from them in order to go into their home and help make their home pretty. And that doesn't have to happen. We are living in a digital age, a virtual age, a I can come with you wherever you are age. And
Totally.
I know I can do mine virtually.
Yep.
I imagine you can do and meet with clients virtually as well. Tell me how that might work.
Yeah, so that is a great question. I'm really excited about the virtual platform for professional organizers. And in fact, I just got certified as a virtual organizing professional. And the beauty of it is much like you might think, or although I do when I mentioned this, a lot of people look at me very confused, like, so how would that work? But the beauty of it is, first of all, each session is only 1 hour long. And in one-on-one organizing in person, it's a minimum 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
And each time. So it's a big chunk of someone's day. So in this case, it's 1 hour. And I'm basically like your instruction manual. So we do real time, and the client shows me where they want to organize. So in a way, it's nice that they get a little more control. They're not just inviting me into the whole house that might be a mess.
Yeah.
So I see just what they want to show me. And basically, we come up with a plan, and we work 1 or 2 hours a week. And there's a journal that we keep. So I keep track of everything we covered in that session and then what their homework is. And we keep in touch the whole week. So she can update the journal or he can update the journal. They can send me texts and say, hey, should I buy this product? What do you think of using this? Or how do I, take care of this closet door or whatever? And then we meet again and we continue that process. So we have also learned, this is really cool. In the certification process, we learned that there is a tremendous amount of science behind this,
Yeah.
that we used to think that people kind of stop learning by 8 years old, and what and you were a sponge, but you're no longer a sponge. And they literally have done science experimentation, or they have really looked into this in many different ways of how our brains function and learn. And it turns out we can build new synapses all the time with new information. So what we're learning about virtual organizing is that it's called skill transfer. They are learning the skills by working with me, by working virtually,
Right.
because I'm walking them through the process step by step. And with the repetition, they are learning new ways of thinking.
Right.
And what happens is the old way they used to do stuff starts to fall away, and those synapses shrivel up and the new ones are created. So people are really changing how they think and how they function in their space, and they are gaining the knowledge to maintain it. So I'm excited about it. I think it's amazing and love working with people no matter where they are.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I liken that what you just said to like rewiring a tape. Remember,
Yeah.
we're maybe about this
Yeah.
where we
Right.
had cassette tapes growing up, right? And you can rewire that tape based on repetition. And those clients are getting a valuable experience because they can ask you why you are telling them what you're telling them, right? It's not
Exactly.
just here's 5 things you need to do with no
Right.
background information, with no explanation. There's that
Right.
interaction, and that interaction allows them to continue learning. I love that.
Totally. And we have found that it's really working. Like people are changing their lives because, again, for someone who didn't learn systems,
Yeah.
this is a great way to learn it by experiencing it.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone is a different learner, right? I mean, I,
Yeah.
I started my career as a first grade teacher, and I can't expect that 5 kids sitting in front of me are going to learn the 5 same ways. They're
Right.
going to all learn differently. And accessing that is super important. And
Yeah.
someone might be able to probably take your book and learn it and go. Some of it
Yeah.
might need to have you and learn it and go. And some people may be able to just be told by you,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
all, I
Well,
love that. There's so many different modalities.
yes. So that's interesting. You said that about me telling somebody how to do it, because I really like to work with my client. Each one is different. My job is to learn how they think
Yeah.
and what is their form of logic. So, and then how they use each thing or each space in their home, because what's their lifestyle? I
Right.
don't want to tell them, well, this is where your hamper should be. Well,
Right.
what if they're like, well, why don't I take my clothes off over here? I take them off somewhere else. So I have to learn them and really help them maximize what they already know.
Right.
That's what I'm doing. I'm like giving them feedback so that they see what's working, and then they see, oh yeah, that doesn't work anymore.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that you're helping them understand the function, the purpose,
Yes.
the
Mhm.
intentionality, all of that behind then the system that you might help them build to make it more
Yes.
efficient for them.
Absolutely. And we sometimes we go through it. I've had clients where I'm like, okay, the best idea I've seen for this is to do your hanging clothes this way. And she was like, well, that wouldn't work for me. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, why wouldn't it work? She's like, it just won't work. I don't like it or whatever. She said, I just won't use it. So I was puzzled. And then I thought, okay, no problem. Let's keep looking for another solution that you like,
Right.
because I can't impose my preferences on how someone lives.
Right.
I'm there to give you suggestions, ideas, 20 years of experience. I've seen this work. I know what new products are out there. I can give you ideas.
Right.
And, you know, the best part is when the client says, oh, actually, I like that one will work
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my favorite lines is, I don't live here, so I'm going to give you lots of ideas and suggestions of based on the information I hear and what I see, but whether virtually or in person, and then you can take it from there. But I don't live here. So my
Right.
suggestion for a rug or a pillow or whatever might be different based on, experience and all the things. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So there is that learning each other, but I guess because I've been doing it long enough, like I don't think just anyone can say, hi, I'm a virtual organizer. I
Yeah,
think you really have to have the hands-on in-person experience just to understand everything in terms of space, in terms of function, in terms of flow, like how a room flows. So you really need that experience behind you to
right.
be able to kind of reach through the screen and say, I think I know what can help you there.
Right, right. And to know which questions to ask them. And that all comes from your experience and the things that you've probably run into with other clients in order to know maybe what they're not telling you, right?
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's a good one. Because a client said, okay, I want to work on my closet. Okay, good. Can I just see the rest of your house? Well, and I said, it might be really helpful. Oh, okay. So now she's showing me walking through hallways. Oh, this door is the closet of this. And over here is, oh, don't, it's just another closet. I'm like, wait, 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 wait. These are
Yeah.
so good. I want to see them. And then
Right,
she would open it and things are falling out. And I'm like, that's a great space. We need to
yeah,
organize that in order to move things from a different area so that you have some flow.
right, right,
So, yes, a lot of times, yes, I only see what they want me to see, but I have a sense of what's, hidden behind the door.
right, exactly. Yeah.
So I,
That,
I have to gently ask, yeah, can I just see what's in the drawer? Can I see
oh,
what's in that cabinet?
yeah, because it really gives you a more full sense of what you're working with.
Oh, yeah,
If you see, it's like habit building, right? And if you see what they're wanting to show you, but you then catch a glimpse of what's happening in the background, you
yeah.
probably want to know what's happening in the background in order to fill out how you can help them in the foreground.
100%. And many times the client doesn't realize, like,
Yeah,
oh, why would that cabinet matter? It's in the bedroom. We're working in the closet. Really? Let me look.
it
And
matters.
it matters. Yeah. And then if the hinge is broken, she's like, oh, this hinge is broken. Let's move on. I'm like, oh, no, that's so important.
Right,
That cabinet is amazing if you fix the hinge.
right, right. Yeah.
And
Don't.
then focus on the priority is fixing the hinge.
Right, right, exactly. Okay, so my listeners can't see what is behind you, but if anyone watches this video, they can. And I see it is a very lovely book. Now, you mentioned a second ago that you illustrated the,
I did.
the pictures in your book.
I
Tell us a
did.
little bit more about it.
So I did a lot of collage. So it's colorful. I have my color wheel with all the steps. And then let's see, let me find a page that has lots of illustrations. I found myself over the years, whenever I was working with my clients, I would explain things to them, like here's a few illustrations. I would explain things to them and they would not understand what's a magazine box. And I said, oh, hold on, let me draw that for you. And then I draw that. Oh, yeah, I understand what that is. Oh, well, of course. Okay. Or how about a shoe shelf? Well, what do you mean by a shoe shelf? So I would draw the shoe shelf. So I am a visual person. I'm an artist. I'm trained in textile design and my mind thinks that way. So as I was writing the book, I was like, oh, this is the perfect place to explain how your desk can look or how your office can be organized. And that's what I set out to do. So every little concept in my book does come with different illustrations, how to organize your pantry, for example, how to organize the laundry room, the basement, and I just, yeah, I just kept drawing things and then referencing that. here's another clothing closet. And of course, in this chapter, I'm going to talk about what is pictured. So I made it um, not just so that it's visually interesting, but I feel like if it's fully text heavy,
Yeah.
that it leaves the reader to their imagination of what they think a shoe shelf is.
Yeah.
And there's, 50 different kinds.
Right.
So, yeah. So I illustrated the ones that I have found over time work the best, the right price point, things like that.
Yeah. Love that. That is fantastic. And what a way to you sound so multi talented. We were talking before we pressed record, and the knowledge and the experience you have is what a wonderful way to combine the two. I absolutely love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel really blessed that I was able to put everything into the book, which combined all the experience that I've had so far. And yeah, it was very exciting to see it all together and help people. I get really good feedback from it. I think even kids love it.
Yeah.
Little kids 8, 9, and 10 years old love this book. And kids love order anyway, as you know, as a
Yes.
teacher,
Yep.
right? In your classroom, you always had things in sections.
Yep. Yep.
And kids learn that really young, but unless it is reiterated at home, they lose that particular skill.
Right. Yes.
So,
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Kids crave structure. They don't have
yes,
words for it, but they need it, and they need it for
100%.
things. And you hit the nail on the head there. They need it at home too. Yeah.
They really do. And as soon as the kids learn about the label maker, that's it. They're
Oh yeah.
like, up and running. Everything's labeled. They really take to it. It's really important. I've had moms tell me, why don't they teach this in school? Like this book should be in schools. And I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you make a good point because systems in general, I mean, creating a study system or
Yeah.
an organized system at home so you can keep track of your things in order to
Yeah.
be a more productive, efficient student is critical. Just like a more productive, efficient adult running a business or running
Exactly.
life in general.
Yeah. 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 That's why I feel it's part of self-care. These are life skills.
They are. Yes,
It's
that's
kind
a
of
great word.
it some people it's funny to me when people say, oh, I should know how to do this, or my mom said that, oh, I know what to do and I'm being lazy, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that is not the reason.
Right. Yes, let's camp on there for 1 second because
Yeah.
a lot of, I mean, what comes naturally to each of us might
Yeah.
not come naturally to anyone else, right?
Yeah.
And however you learn to be organized, the history of that is different than how the person you're helping is going to be learning.
Right.
But it's not assumed that we should know how to do anything. If you think about, learning how to cook or bake cookies, you had to
Right.
learn at some point how to do that, a most basic skill, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
riding you didn't come out of the womb knowing how to ride a bike. You can't
Exactly.
expect to come out of the womb knowing how to organize. You have to
100%.
experience, be taught, learn it some way. And some of us just gravitate to those things easier than others.
Yeah. And yes, gravitating towards is a thing because I feel like I gravitated towards that, but I didn't learn it at home. My mom was super disorganized, just piles of paper everywhere. And she would be that person who was like, don't throw away my newspaper because I wrote a note on the top corner of that newspaper. And I was like, how in the world does she do this? And so for me, it was like, I know I wanted to learn this, but I did not see it as an example.
Right,
We had someone that came and helped clean weekly, and I saw the result, and I loved everything in order, but that's not how we lived. And
right,
I did not know how one achieved that pretty result.
right, right. That's
So,
very similar to my story too, Nicole.
oh, interesting.
I my home was a disorganized, not cute mess. And I think going back to what the kiddos need, like that structure that they crave and they need,
Yeah,
I needed that. Of course, in my 7-year-old, 8-year-old, even 15-year-old self, I had no idea.
sure.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting thing. But yeah, it wasn't learned. So it gives hope to all these people who want both an organized home and a beautiful home, right?
100%. I think they
Affordable.
totally go hand in hand. I think that's a huge trend right now too. It's like we don't just want it orderly; we want it to look pretty.
Yeah.
And I think there's more and more products out there that allow that. And allow things to be movable if they have wheels, or maybe a piece of a cabinet moves out, or there's a drawer in there, or some other insert that you can take with you or move around.
Right.
So I think there's so much creativity now as far as the right storage products, containers, design wise. It's there's so much out there. And interestingly, though, the functionality I think is so important, because it can look pretty and then not function.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it needs to be dovetailed. It has to be both.
Right, exactly. And it, on the flip side, it can, organization, like if I don't have the sources to buy the beautiful magazine boxes, I can
Right.
probably DIY something from a Cheerio box, right? It's
Oh,
only
yeah.
until I can find the resource in order to make it.
100%. I've done that numerous times where I look at a box and I'm like, I could use that. If only I cut it in half and I put the flaps this way and I covered it like this. Well, that becomes the perfect toy box for my little dog
That's right.
until I find something pretty. So, yeah, there's definitely ways we can upcycle so much of what we have, but it does require a little more forethought
Yes.
before you finalize that purchase.
Right.
Definitely.
And it could serve as a nice experimentation too, to think, oh, I think this could be a solution, but I don't want to invest the $50 in that thing yet until I know that that solution works as the organizational, I'm just going to use the word prop. And you could experiment with that dimension, that size, that Amazon box until, yep, that works. I'm going to go now and buy the pretty thing.
100%. We
Yeah.
think so much alike. Yeah, and I often do that myself, because sometimes I'm like, let me see if I like the location of this thing and the way it functions there. Let me try this particular box or drawer or whatever it is. And sometimes I'll be like, you know what? It didn't work that way. It needed to be much taller and it needed to be long instead of a box.
Right.
So then I can adjust that way. But
Right.
I totally agree. Before you start investing in the beautiful pieces, just, practice a little
Yeah. And
and
experiment.
how you use things. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Experiment. Because like if you're organizing, let's say a little homework desk area for your child and it's near the kitchen. So see how your kid works. Do they love colored pencils and pens, or are they just like, I just want a gray pencil? That's it.
Right.
So, right. And it's like, do they need their little pencil box to be portable because they want to sit on the sofa? Or are they good with a pen cup?
Yeah. Right.
So
Exactly.
you have to see how you live and use that as your cue.
And it all goes back to that functionality piece, right? That
Yeah.
section, in going back to your steps, the section, how do you use that space, the purpose behind it, the functionality, the intention behind it before we then move forward.
Yes.
Oh, Nicole, I can talk to you, I think, for hours, and
Hours, I'm sure.
like-minded. Tell
Yes.
us how we can learn more from you and get connected with you. Tell us where we can find you.
Yes, of course. I have a website, which is the letter B like boy hyphen organized, organized.net. That's my website. My Instagram is at Nicole Gabai. That's my full name. And you can email me. My phone number is also on the website. So feel free to call. And if you want to buy the book, it is available on Amazon, The Art of Organizing. Um, and
And I'll
actually, it's
have
available.
and
Sorry.
I'll have the links in the show notes too for all of the things, your website and to purchase your book.
Thank you. And I was also going to add, you can buy the book at any bookstore. It
Oh,
is
fantastic.
distributed through international distributor that every bookstore uses. So,
Wonderful. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk with you today. And I
oh,
hope
thank
that a lot of my mamas who are wanting to really become intentional with their spaces will come in contact you.
you, Danny. Thanks for
You're wel-
having me.
you're
It was
welcome.
great.